Happy Wednesday, everyone. Welcome to a brand new live stream with me. And today we have a pretty cool topic. We're going to be looking at a whole bunch of ways of learning from your competition so you can move faster. It's the fastest way to do pretty much anything. But as always, I would love to hear where you're from and what's in your cup. I am drinking Earl Grey tea, which by now you probably know is my favorite, in an Appfigures mug. We ran out of these, so we need to make new ones. And I am here in New York City, so you may hear some sirens in the background because that's been going on all morning for some reason. So in the chat, let me know where you're from, what you're drinking, and we'll get started very soon. We'll let people shuffle in on this Wednesday morning. Well, my morning, at least. And if you can't hear me, I will up the volume. Hopefully you can hear me better now, and I didn't just pop your ears. So let me know in the chat where you're from, what you're drinking. We'll get started very, very soon. As you probably know, I really like talking about competitors. And it's because people ask me all the time, how do I get more downloads? How do I make more money? How do I do all the things that make me better on the App Store or in Google Play? And the answer is always, so there are two answers, really. Answer number one is you can try different things. I love to experiment. Try something, see if it works, and if it does, great. Try it again, do something that evolves it. If it doesn't, try something else. That takes a long time, so you end up with just endless experiments. And I love endless experiments, so for me, that's pretty cool. But I want to do it faster. And I think you probably want to do it faster, too, because you don't have infinite time. No one does. And one of the best ways to do that is by learning from other people's experiments. So one of the things that I look at all the time is App Store optimization and keywords. And if you're following any of my newsletters, you know how much I talk about that. So we're going to look at something like that today. But we're also going to look at first understanding your market and also understanding more things than just the keywords that competitors are using. When I see we have, again, a global crowd. So we have Italy in the house, Chicago, Miami, Texas. Cool. Water. So I was really thirsty this morning, so I have me some tea, which I always have. And then I made me some espresso, which I didn't drink yet, but will at some point. And then I also have some water, just in case, because I'll run out of everything, and my voice will go strange. So that's me today. Ooh, Istanbul. Cool. Continuing with the global crowd. How's my microphone? Can you hear me well? Is my volume okay? Can you see me? Hopefully you can see me. And if you're talking in the chat, that means you can hear me. But let me know how everything works. Every time I stream, something else tries to trick me. This morning, it was my Mac Mini. The new Mac Minis have a mind of their own. They kind of like doing their own thing. And we'll wait just maybe another minute and then jump into talking about competitors. It's going to be really fun. So I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to show you a new thing that we are now making available for free, which you can use to kind of kickstart this whole operation. And that's going to be good. Okay, confirmation in the chat that everything is okay. Cool. Thank you. And, ooh, more confirmation in the chat. Thank you again. Cool. I'm glad everything is working. Streaming is always fun. Or streaming correctly is always fun. Streaming with technical difficulties, like maybe 3 or 4 streams ago, for those of you who remember, we had 9 minutes of technical difficulties, was less fun. But that's not happening again, so we don't have to worry about it. But cool. Ooh, we have Russia in the house. We have Mauritius. Is that how you say it? Is that how you pronounce it? I'm going to go with the yes, because that works. And I think let's get started. We're 4 minutes in. We started on time, which is always good. Let's get ready to talk about competitors. So, hi everyone. My name is Ariel from Appfigures. You might know me from my videos or my live streams. And if you don't, I talk a lot about apps, about App Store optimization, about competitor intelligence, and about pretty much everything else, from marketing all the way down to engagement. And this month, we're doing one live stream where I'm focusing all my attention on a variety of different tools that together give you a lot of insight into your competitors in a way that can allow you to get more downloads more quickly. So the idea behind this, and the reason why this became a topic, is people ask me all the time how to beat their competitors. And they ask it in a variety of different ways, from asking very specific questions about keywords to very vague questions about how do I get more downloads. And all of those have their own answers, but really it comes down to you can learn on your own by experimenting, by trying different things, or you can learn from competitors who are also experimenting on their own in a way, and then run your experiments off of that. So everything that I talk about is always iterative, meaning you try something, and if it works, you do more. If it doesn't, you undo quickly and continue on to something else. So if you have a better foundation for what to try, you can make a better product. You can work on the right features. You can make sure that you're getting the right amount of downloads and ratings to compete in specific keywords. You can make sure that this new app, that this new crazy idea that you have, that is amazing and everyone's going to love it, actually has some grounding, and you're not going to spend the next 3 to 6 months building something no one is going to like. Or the opposite. Your great idea is also something 1,000 other apps are doing already, and competing is going to be really tough. So all these things are things you don't necessarily want to make mistakes with, and you don't have to, because you can easily just learn from the competition. So I'm going to walk you through how I look for competitors to begin with and understand the competitive landscape, similar apps that are relevant. And I have 2 tools that do this, not just one. So it's a little bit easier. And then we're going to look at how to analyze those competitors. What can you learn from them? You can learn what their users love and hate. Isn't that amazing? As a product manager, you want to know exactly what their users, your competitors, what their users love and hate, because you can build what they hate better, and you can replicate what they love so you can get more of those users. And then we're going to look at keywords and how to look at their keywords and get their keywords and understand why they're even doing them and find opportunities. Now, that is a lot. That's what I'm aiming to do today. I may not have enough time. So if I don't have enough time, we'll turn this to a 2-parter, and we'll do part 1 today and part 1 in the future. I have a great live stream coming up in a month, or in a few weeks, actually. So maybe in December. We'll see. But with no further ado, let's jump right into it. And as always, if you have any questions, drop them in the chat. I look at the chat all the time. That's where my eyes are looking right now, in case you're curious. So I'm looking at the chat, and I'm going to answer all the ones that make sense right now, and all the ones that don't later in the video, or in the stream at the end. So stick around if you want your answers answered, unless I answer them. So let's jump into the first tool that I use to understand the competitive landscape, because one of the things that are very easy to do are jump into the App Store on your phone or on your Android if it's Google Play, and look for apps and just search for apps. And that's a very easy way to understand who's competing. But what you're seeing there is something we'll look at in just a little bit. You're seeing what the algorithm, what the App Store, what Google Play want you to see as a user. They're not showing you what's actually existing. And that's a problem because, as you know, if you've been following any of my SEO stuff, the algorithm has very specific rules for what it ranks and what it shows in the search results. Now, you can swipe on forever and go through the first 100 results and take the time to do it. I have a much easier way to do it. So let me switch to my computer, and I will show you Explorer. Some of you may be familiar with this tool, or some of you may have noticed that it got added to your menus, to your left side menus on Friday. This Friday, they just happened. If you don't know what this is, head on to explore.appfigures.com, and if you're logged into your Appfigures account, you should be able to use this regardless of which plan you are, free all the way up to really all the plans that we have. That's something that we launched on Friday. We haven't really announced it yet, so this is me pre-announcing it. Consider now you know a secret, unless you follow me on Twitter, and then you know 2 secrets. But the idea behind Explorer is exactly what I said that I wanted out of the App Store. So I want to be able to type in something, really anything, and I want to find all the apps that mentioned it in their app name, in their developer name, in their description, and I have all these other filters that I can use to understand what's going on. And that gives me a much better idea than having to go through the App Store or through Google Play search, because now I can see what's actually happening as opposed to what the store wants me to see. I can also see Google Play and iOS all at the same time, so I'm going to do that. I can also see the Mac App Store and a whole bunch of CTV and games and everything else, but we're not going to care about those for now. Because what I want to do today is I want to pick an app and I want to walk you through how I would do a competitive analysis for that. And one of the apps that I like a lot is Duolingo. I talked about it in my This Week in Apps newsletter not too long ago. They broke a huge milestone, or they're about to break a huge milestone. And I think it's well-deserved. So what I want to do today is, I'm going to take a look. I'm going to put myself in the shoes of Duolingo and try to do this analysis. So the first thing that I would want to do, and this is something I imagine all of you would want to do, is going to explore and look for any apps that have something that resembles what my app does. So in my case, Duolingo, an app that I've looked at a bunch of times, I've also done an app teardown on them a while back, is language learning. And if you have tried learning a language without being a child, or after you were a child as an adult, you know it's kind of difficult. And different apps take different approaches to do it. And so this is a fairly competitive landscape. Duolingo is definitely ahead of most of the other ones, as you'll probably see today, or if you read the edition of This Week in Apps that I'm referring to, you would know. But even when you're ahead, you still have to continue and improve, because otherwise your competitors will do the same thing, will do their competitive analysis, and will find ways to beat you. So let's try and do that. And the first thing that I'm thinking about when I think Duolingo, I think language learning. But even though I see 283,000 apps that mention language or learning in any of these, I don't see Duolingo. And that's because Duolingo doesn't use language learning in their name. They use language lessons, which I looked up not too long ago. So what I'm doing here is I'm looking for all the apps that have language learning in their name, description, or developer name, or language lessons. And now I have a data set that's a little bit more interesting and more useful. So now I can see Duolingo. And if the question is how many apps mention language learning in their name, description, or developer name, we can easily say that. But let's focus a little bit more, because we don't want to look at all the apps. And we want to look at only the apps that use it in the name on Google or on the App Store. And we have 3,700. Would you expect that's the number? Because I definitely did not expect 3,700 apps to have language learning or language lessons in the app. I think that's more, way more than what I would imagine. And so when you think about this industry now, or this market, this segment of the market, it's kind of big. So if you're about to launch a language lessons app, this is what you're going to be competing with. And this is a very easy way to know it. So now that I'm Duolingo and I'm starting to think, who should I even look at? I don't really know what most of these are. I know Babbel. We're going to look at Babbel in a little bit. But let me see which ones are the highest rated. Obviously, Duolingo, well done. But then Babbel is up here. Memrise is up here. What else? All these. So I'm going to start by looking at Babbel. I've known Babbel for a long time, and instead of doing this, I'm going to jump right into the full profile because it's a little bit easier. And here the fun begins. So now that I know that Babbel is a competitor, and I'm going to add Memrise in here. Was it a Z or an S? It was an S. Cool. Well, it worked anyway. So now that we know that we have these competitors, one of the things that I immediately want to know is I want to know how I compare to them in terms of downloads. And the reason for that is to establish a benchmark. It doesn't mean that, well, it does mean that you're doing less good than them if you have fewer downloads, but it doesn't mean that that's a problem yet, because you are trying to improve that. The question is, how many? So I'm going to throw Duolingo in here. And we can now have a good understanding of what's going on. And let's extend this range to maybe a full year, just so we have an idea of what's going on. Now, at a glance, what we're looking at is we're looking at the estimated downloads. These are all estimates based on our estimation models. We don't have any direct knowledge of these apps, but our estimates are pretty good. So we can look at downloads and we can look at revenue. And one thing that I like to do is look at the trend. This is daily downloads. We can easily make it monthly downloads, which I think would tell us a slightly more generalizable story. Yeah, there we go. And now I have a benchmark. So if I am Babbel, what I want to do now is I want to set a target. And my target is how many downloads can I get? I can go probably more than Duolingo, but the market itself is what Duolingo is right now. So I can go 10x on my downloads if I'm Babbel just by looking at downloads in the market. So if I'm thinking how much money should I be spending on ads, how much effort should I be putting into content marketing or search engine optimization, or really any activity that will give you more visibility, which is what will eventually turn into downloads, that's exactly what you want to be looking at here. Because if you're thinking, if you are pitching this to a manager, if you're pitching this to your boss, if this is your app and you want to do this yourself, you have to have some sort of a number to understand what's going on. And if you don't, you're just guessing. So you might overspend on ads. You might spend on negative ROI campaigns. If you do any sort of influencer marketing, you will need to understand their audience and you will need to understand what your capabilities are and what's the maximum. This is a very easy way to do this, a definite must. And then you can do the same thing by country. So if you're thinking, where should I place my Apple search ads? Should I do that only in the US? Should I do it only in Germany? Should I do it only in France? Should I do all of the above? By looking at competitor downloads, you can easily see what makes sense. So we can tell that Mesmerize is doing pretty well in the US and Russia. Fairly close, more than I would expect. Babbel is doing pretty well in the US and then in Germany, and everything else kind of tapers off. Babbel is doing well in the US, UK, Japan, Vietnam. So these are all competing on different segments. This is also another way to look at, to plan for Apple search ads or Facebook ads or Google ads. Even though everyone is doing Apple search ads these days, that's kind of the hottest thing to do, or the hottest way to burn money if you do it incorrectly. But that's for a different live stream. So this is another way to look at where should I be spending my money. When it comes to any sort of paid ads, you really want to be careful about how you spend your money and where you spend your money. Otherwise, you're just burning it. And we'll look at keywords in just a little bit, which will help you do that better. So I look at those first. And then the same way that I do this, I also look at revenue. Whoa, my mouse kind of escaped. And revenue is, again, the same thing. So if you're spending on ads, if you're spending on any sort of promotional activity, you can now have an idea of how much money you can make. And making money is very difficult to estimate just by looking at revenue because there's a lot that goes into it, and revenue is not profit. So keep that in mind. But at the end of the day, if you need to establish some sort of a benchmark, what's possible? What's my cap? What will the market bear? Now you have a much better idea. So if you're Babbel and you're thinking, is my 3 million in July of 2022, and this is specifically on the App Store. I didn't do any Google Play, but I can easily add Google Play. Is that enough? Can I do more? And when Memrise is asking the same question, Memrise is a 10th of Babbel roughly, and Duolingo is what, 5x Babbel? So now you have kind of a scale and a multiplier, and you have an idea of what's going on in the market. So if you're not doing any of this, you are just going to be flying blind, and you might overspend on ads, or you might not spend enough on ads. You might not do enough organic activities to actually push to that level where you get these downloads. And so that's what I look at the most, or that's what I look at first, I should say. And what I usually do is I'll go between Explorer, so I can find all the apps and I can take a look, and then I'll take a look at the breakdown. A lot more apps on Google Play versus the App Store. I can take a look at the average rating just to have an idea of what my app should be, the average number of ratings, the number of unique developers in this. So we have 2,000 developers making almost 4,000 apps. That's incredible, incredible. And then what I would do is I would go in here, and now I want to try another tool, and that's Keyword Inspector. Those who have been to this live stream before know how much I like it. And the one thing that we can do here is now we can see what the algorithm, Apple in this particular case, but we can easily switch to Google, what the algorithm thinks is most relevant. And obviously Duolingo is at the top, even though it's language learning and not language lessons, which is very interesting. So kind of a side note, Language learning is our keyword. Language lessons is number one. We can talk about this afterwards, but I mean, look at these ratings, and learning is probably the first item in the keyword list. I don't know if learn and learning is being connected by the algorithm. Anyway, I am now going on a tangent, but from here, you can do something very similar to what I just did, and there is a shortcut even where I can do this in App Intelligence. So now I loaded the top 5 by what the App Store says, and we can do the same analysis as well. So we can easily expand the selection of competitors we're looking into so we can learn from them, and that becomes very interesting. Now, I'm still Duolingo, and I want to continue this, so I'm going to look at Babbel's ranks. Why ranks? Ranks are a lot less relevant these days. Ranks used to be all the rage back 5-6 years ago, but then the stores became all about editorials, and they're very curated, so it's harder to tell what's ranking well and why. But when you look at it, it's still important to see how it goes up and down. So here we're looking at, let's say, the last 30 days of these ranks, and these are coming directly from Apple in this case for the US. So you can see what's going on, and you can see it's pretty stable, I would say. Nothing crazy. It's in top apps as well. So that's both good news and bad news, because it's good news because stability is good. Stability in general means that you can plan for things. It's not good because it's also not growing. If it was number one and stable forever, that would be great. But it is not. It is not number one at all, and it is not stable. So we're not seeing growth here. And that's, if we're Duolingo, that's good for us. That means that Babbel is just not doing enough. Babbel is not trying hard enough, and that's good for business. If we are Babbel, this is bad for business. This is something that is important to see about competitors to understand how this changes as well. And one of the things we're working on are alerts specifically for that. So when this changes, you can easily see it. So if I'm Duolingo, I can easily enable an alert for, if this stability ends and these ranks go up, let me know immediately, because that means that Babbel, who might be on this live stream, is listening and is applying some sort of something new. Something new is happening. Now, there's a question in the chat asking after how many hours you scrape the App Store database, like daily. We do it a whole bunch of times throughout the day. So we have data happening or coming in throughout the day. For ranks, it's every hour. For metadata, it's every few hours. For reviews, it's ongoing. For ratings, it's throughout the day. So it really depends on the data set. But we try to get data as quickly as possible, or as freshly as possible. And it used to be the case that data wouldn't change as much. The App Store would change every hour. Google Play wouldn't. Keywords wouldn't move as much. And that's no longer the case. Things are moving really fast, especially with keywords, which is why we do every hour. And maybe we'll get to see that in just a little bit. So those are ranks. And we look for consistency versus inconsistency versus the actual rank. Another thing that is very important, and that's a good lead into what's coming next, are ratings. So ratings are kind of the currency of organic discovery. If you have more ratings, more new ratings over the last 7 to 30 days than your competitors, you're going to rank better for the keywords you're targeting, which is exactly what we saw when we looked at, where is our search? When we looked at the search, we saw that Duolingo is ranking number one, even though it doesn't have the keyword in its name. So Babbel has the keyword in its name. All these other ones have the keyword in their name, except for this one. Learn again. We'll have to look into this. But it's number one because look at those ratings. It's beating everyone on ratings. This is 3x this, a whole bunch of x this. I'm not even thinking about this. It's fairly relevant based on how low it is. So that's something you have to know about the competition, and that's something that's really important to keep in mind. So if we go back in here and we want to switch to new ratings, we can do that as well. And these ratings are going to be on a daily chart because that's what I'm most interested in. We can see them even more granular, and these update all the time. So once they load, then I should say I'm doing all of this in real time. I haven't prepared any of this. I'm doing this analysis as I'm talking. Or I'm talking as I'm doing this analysis. It's really the same thing. So if something is slow, that's a problem. But that's a real problem, so that's okay. Stuff is loading. We'll wait. We're patient. Maybe. Aha, you see, patience paid off. So now we can see the number of new ratings by month because we're still in monthly granularity from before, and we can see that for every competitor. And that makes a lot of sense based on what we saw in the results. Babbel was number 2, Memrise was somewhere in there, so they're close in terms of search results, but they're not close in terms of ratings, and it's going to take Memrise a lot of work to get from 35-ish 100 new ratings to 24,000 so they can beat Babbel. And for Babbel, it would take about 5x again to beat Duolingo. Now, there are ways to get more ratings, and one of the things that I like to look at, I'm deviating a tiny bit here, is I like to look at the ratio of downloads to new ratings, and this is a metric we're going to be adding to this chart very soon, this table. So you can see that Duolingo is getting about, what is this, 8x, 7x, 7 times the downloads, but only 3 times the ratings, which means that all Babbel needs to do to get close to this is they need to optimize their ratings to get more ratings out of their existing new downloads. And so that's a great understanding that you can, or a great insight into your performance, because you don't need to 7x your downloads to beat Duolingo. There's this misconception that downloads are what controls these ranks, and that's not the case. It's these, a combination of ratings and keywords, and a few other things that if you're really interested in, you should go read Keyword Teardowns, where I analyze keywords every week. But that's really what it's all about, these 2 metrics. And if you look at the ratio between them, you can aim for something that might be a little bit higher for you, but is better than your competition. And that can get you close. For example, Babbel doesn't need 30,000 new ratings to get ahead away from Duolingo. They need maybe another 7 to 10, I would say. If they get to like that 19 range, I think they might be number 1 in this category. Now, is it worth spending all that time to optimize the ratings to get to number 1 in a keyword where they're number 2? I'm not entirely sure if I'm Babbel. That's a conversation for a different day. But I would always love to be number 1, especially for a keyword that has a popularity of 52. So it's pretty important, in my opinion, to do this. And now you can easily see. You can easily see that all you need is you need to improve your ratings. You don't necessarily need to go and 7x your downloads. Actually, if you 7x your downloads, you're going to have so many more ratings, so that's going to be great. But that's probably going to cost a lot of money if you're doing that with paid ads or anything like that. So let's leave that to the side. Now, a few questions in the chat that I'm looking at right now is Shivam is asking how to check the exact revenue in dollars for any app. And I think I just show that. So you go into competitor intelligence here and you put in any app. Let's see, what app would you like? I mean, any app can really fit in here. So you can see this example. You can check this out. There's a live demo on the site. So if you have an account, just click on this. If you don't have an account, go create an account and check this out for free. Shivam is saying Apple rejects my app as spam every time. How to convince them it's not? And it's funny because this is one of the reasons why I even thought about this topic. So I'll go back to Explore. And one of the things that you can do is you can easily, let me clear this and start over. One of the easiest ways that you can tell if your app could be considered as spam is look for any keyword that has it in its name. And drinking games is one of the categories Apple really dislikes. And they use the reasoning. I was going to say the excuse, but that's not true. They use the reasoning that drinking games, there are too many. But if you look at this, there aren't really too many. I mean, 2,000 if you look at the description, but this is drinking, not necessarily drinking game. So how do you say to Apple, hey, oh, wow, that's interesting. How do you say to Apple, hey, this is not spam? Is difficult, but I think the better way of thinking about this is before even going down the path of developing an app that could be considered spam, check this and make sure that there aren't enough apps in there right now that do this, whether it's a game or an app or really anything else. And so that is a very easy way to do this. And this is one of the reasons why we decided to open this tool, which has been around for about, I want to say 6 years at this point. It's one of our best selling tools for larger companies who do a lot of research, why we're trying to open this for free or enable some of it for free so everyone can have that sort of access. So check this before you do anything would be my suggestion. And let's see, Andrew is saying, is the rating global? For example, does rating from one country impact the ranking in another? The answer is no. The ratings, especially on the Apple side, are, well, only on the Apple side, are local, meaning that ratings in the US will impact the US, ratings in China will impact the ranks, the keyword ranks in China. On Google Play, ratings are a whole different beast, and they're handled a slightly different way, and Google really messed them up not too long ago. So on the Google side, they are global, not on the Apple side. What else are we seeing in the chat? Adir is asking, does the rating/installs ratio has any impact or only the overall number of ratings? From everything that I can tell, it's really just the number of ratings. Oh, let me see if I can bring this on screen. I haven't done this in a while, so I managed to forget. So it's less about the ratio. The ratio is a good way for you to know what's going on. It's a good way for me to say you need more ratings, or you should be doing this, or you should be doing that. But the ratio itself does not. Let's see if this worked. This did not work. Oh no, it did work, and it came with a fun bar on the left. Worry about this later. So the ratio itself, from everything I have seen, has no impact on actual rankings, on keyword ranks, but it's a good measure for you to know what do you need to do to beat the competitors. How do you get up 1, 2, 3 tiers? And also a good way for you to know that if you are optimizing and you're spending the time and putting in the effort, how do you know that it's actually paying off? If you're just getting more ratings that you would have gotten anyway based on new downloads, you're not getting anything new, so it's not worth it. But if the ratio goes up, you know that you're doing a good job. So to me, that's a metric to measure the performance of what I'm doing, all the effort that I'm putting in. Let's see what else is in the chat. So Aditya is asking, how do you calculate the downloads for apps if stores don't show it? How you estimate it? So we estimate it using a variety of signals that we find in the App Store, from where an app is ranked to where to how fast an app is moving, to how popular it is, to what people are saying about it, really a bunch of different things. And we take that and we run that through our deep learning models that have been trained on a lot of data, on billions of data points. And that's how they do the estimates. And that's really the easiest way, once you have those estimates, to understand the performance on the App Store. And the same for Google Play. And we do that for revenue and downloads. And there's this weird misconception by some that I've seen on Twitter that they believe that revenue estimates are a multiplier on download estimates by the price of the app. That is not at all true. We do revenue estimates separately on their own with their own models, and download estimates on their own, trained on downloads versus trained on revenue. And that's how we get very close to reality. Again, these are estimates. So if something does not look right and you know the data and you're there, these are estimates. I did say that up front, but we aim to get them as close as possible. And we worked on this very, very, very long in order to get close, because we believe that if we give you just an estimate that is a thing, it's not going to be good enough. And that's why for some apps, we don't have estimates, because we don't have estimates that are good enough, and we don't want to give you low quality estimates. There's another question about, let's see. I'm not entirely sure I understand this, but before we even jump into this question, if you like this video so far, if you like this live stream, I keep saying video because I'm used to recording videos, but if you like this live stream, take a second, give it a like. I want YouTube to know that my live streams are good. So continuing, let's see what else we have in the chat. So Regis is asking, what happens if you are the app? And let's see, oh yeah, okay, we got comments back on the screen. What happens if you are the app number 4 with very low ratings? you are miles away from 1 and 2. So that is a good question. And if you read the latest keyword teardown from yesterday or the day before, because today is Wednesday, you know that if you run into this case, you should look for a different keyword. It's very difficult to compete in keywords where you're miles away. Even if you're not miles away and you're just a few meters away, it's still very difficult unless you can have that sort of momentum. So you can get that momentum by doing some sort of paid ads just to get more downloads and optimize the way that new ratings make their way into the app. And if you can do that fast enough, then I would say aim for a keyword where the ratios are maybe a little bit more reasonably realistic when you compare them to your apps, which is really the important bit here. So it's all very relative. It's not necessarily that if you have the most ratings, you're going to win. It's you just need to have more ratings than the competition. So if you can find a keyword that is as popular, amazing. And I will show you, hopefully, a way to do that if we have enough time. But if you can't find a keyword that is as popular, lower your bar a tiny bit, get going with that keyword, rise up, get those downloads, and then you can rethink your strategy and potentially target that other keyword that is now kind of beyond reach. What else is in the chat? Shivam is asking, in Explorer, in text search, how to search for exact keywords that match, like the app name should contain word 1 and word 2. You would do that using quotes. So as long as you have quotes, you will get what you're looking for. And let me show you how to do that quickly. So we'll go back to computer. And we can say here, instead of drinking game as 2 words, we'll go drinking game, just drinking and game, and we'll lower that to just the app name. And you can see that all of these will have drinking game in their name. So not even that many. 78 results. Again, this is one of those very funny keywords where Apple says one thing, but the data says something a little bit different. It's obviously not something that is objective. It's all subjective, but something that you can do. So continuing, let's see what else is in the chat. The chat is happening. More chatty than I expected. Armando is saying, I'm trying to grow my US ratings. Well, let me put that on the screen. I'm trying to grow my US ratings in the App Store, but when I go one up, almost always it gets removed. Also, other apps with no ratings are ranking better than mine. I'm not sure what you mean by gets removed, because that sounds pretty bad, but I have seen some funky behavior with apps that have 0 ratings. I think I know what's going on. Some keywords are very different, and I have a feeling something is changing with the algorithm, especially with iOS 16. So if you can email me or share more details in a comment below, that would be great. That would be very helpful because I can take a look at that. Adir is asking, if a user gave a rating through an install that came from searching this keyword, does that give a better rank for this specific keyword? And I think the answer for that is yes on Google Play. On Apple, I am not 100% sure. I don't think it is. I think the ratings are segregated. I think the fact that the download came from the keyword is enough to give you that little boost that you need to go up in ranks for the for as far as search results go, but not necessarily that you need to that the rating itself has any sort of impact on this. Let's bring comments back and let's see what else. Nathan is asking, I recently upgraded my plan to the App Intelligence, but the estimated downloads revenue are not showing up well for my apps versus competitors, saying that it doesn't reach threshold from support. So that's exactly what I was referring to before. One of the reasons why we don't show estimates for some apps is because they don't have enough signals for us to use to provide an estimate. We can provide an estimate, meaning we can come up with a number, but from everything we've seen, it's below our threshold of what we believe is accurate enough. And our accuracy level is pretty high, and we push that bar up higher all the time because we believe that if we give you something that is incorrect, it's worse than giving you nothing. Others do give you something that is incorrect, and I think that's a mistake to rely on anything that is not accurate enough. So that's why we don't have it. We're always working hard to get more data and to find more signals to feed the algorithm. And so the idea that in the future this will be possible is probably realistic, But I believe I've seen your tickets. I have not looked into those apps in particular, but I can take a look, and we'll let you know if there's anything that we think we can do or help with. Otherwise, some things that I would recommend using if you're trying to compare yourself to the competition is look at their ranks, again, stability versus growth or decline, and also look at the change in ratings. Those are very important things to look at when comparing yourself to a competitor. So those are ways that you can use. Those are things that you can use if you don't have any actual estimates. Not ideal, I know, but we're always working hard to get even more estimates. And again, without sacrificing or without lowering the bar for estimates, always increasing it. But that's what we are trying to do. Ritas is saying, thank you. You're welcome. More questions. I managed to beat very popular keywords in the scenario and can't figure out how I did it. This was on Play Store, possibly in description optimization. Whew. We can talk about description optimization for Google Play for a whole live stream, which I intend to do in the future because we have released a tool that will help you do that called the Keyword Density Report, and it's available on the menu, in the menu on the left. On the menu in the left, you pick. So there are a lot of different techniques to use the description, but the description works with everything else that you have. So it's a combination of ratings and keywords, just like it is with Apple. With Google, you also have the long description as a way of signaling to the algorithm what the app is about, which is, I think, a great tool. So if you haven't already, check it out. It's on the left menu. Let's see if I can show that to you quickly. It's going to be in... Wow, mouse has disappeared. Haha. I found my mouse. We're in business. So it's going to be here. Keyword density. So you can head into this, and I think I showed this off in one of my previous, probably live teardowns. Head into here, type in an app. You know what? Let's do this. Duolingo. No. We're Duolingo. We're doing Babbel. So let's analyze the description of Babbel quickly and see if they're doing a good job with their optimization on Google Play. And the answer is, yes. I don't really have many, there aren't many issues that we point out. So we have maybe 5 or maybe even more suggestions and issues that come up based on what we see in the description. I wrote all of them and I set up all the rules, and nothing is really coming up. So this is very nice. Description is getting long is just a suggestion. It's not really an issue, but I mean, look at this. So the density here is pretty nice. We aim for between 2 and 5%, though 5 is very extreme. 2 and 3% is probably a good way to go. Language learning is in here. Well done. This is good. This is good. You're not seeing me, but I'm clapping my hands. We can talk about this on a different live stream, but I didn't even think of showing this in this one, and we're running out of time, so I guess that makes sense. This will definitely become a 2-parter. So I'm going to continue and look at the chat, and we'll see what else we have in the chat. I found my mouse again. Nathan is saying, Nathan followed up from before. For example, my iOS app shows 33 estimated downloads, but the actual downloads are 7K. What is the minimum threshold to get better info? So what I imagine is happening here is that we have estimates for some countries, not for all, obviously very small countries. If you look in the table by country, which I was showing before when we looked at Babbel versus the competitors, you'll be able to see which countries we have estimates for. And again, I will take a look at this and see what I can help with. Aditya is asking, let's see. Oh, my keywords are not. My chat is not on the screen again. Okay, chat is back. So Aditya is asking, do paid apps work now or after downloading? We should give in-app purchases. Like, it's easy to make paid apps than to make a paywall. I can talk about this for far too long because I believe that paid apps are done. They're dead. I think they have there are very few cases where paid apps actually make sense, but for the most part, they don't. So yes, it is easier to make a paid app. You also make a lot less money. I've looked at that a bunch of different times, and I wrote a bunch of different articles that compare the top apps making the most money, the top paid apps versus the top free apps making even more money. And you can see the numbers are just astronomically different. So you can make a paid app. I think you're going to see very little engagement because if you think about this, and I don't want to get into it too much because I can talk about this for days, but if you think about this, you have an app that is paid, costs some money, even 99 cents, and you have probably 10 other apps that are not paid. They might have uglier screenshots and may not have a video and may not feel like they're as polished, but they're free. So if I'm a user and I'm looking for this one app because I have this one use case, I'm probably not going to go for the paid app first. I might go and say, oh, this looks really cool. Let me try this one that is free before. Now, the app that's free is probably not free. It's got an in-app purchase. So really, it can capture that user who's coming in for free if they are good, if they're good enough. They don't have to be best, just good enough. So I would say do not make a paid app. Do not spend time on an app that can only get you paid once if you can build a subscription app. Now, not all apps make sense as a subscription. So a paywall is something else, but some apps make more sense as a consumable in-app purchase or one in-app purchase. So it's not a matter of subscription versus paid. It's a matter of paid up front versus paid later. And the pay later can be done in a bunch of different ways. Pay later is freemium, subscription, really anything else. I'm not talking about ad supported. That's a whole other conversation. So I would say do not make paid apps. Make pay later apps. And how you pay later will depend on what your app provides. More chat. Ram is asking, what do you recommend to use in the app name? Is keyword by app name better than app name : keyword? Oh, a lovely question. I talked about this a bunch in keyword teardowns, and I think both are good depending on what you're trying to do. So if you have, and this focuses really on app name. If your app name is something people are looking for, if it's a recognizable brand, if it's maybe something that you advertise elsewhere, then putting it up front is probably a better way to do it. I say probably because it just might be. It really depends. It's a big brand. So is this the kind of thing where people are looking for the word Duolingo versus are people looking for Babbel? But people are looking for language learning. So if the keyword is more important than the name, put it first. For most apps that are starting out, or for most apps that are not top, most well-known in their industry, or for most apps that are small enough and are trying to grow, experimenting with keyword first and then app name is, in my opinion, always a good thing to do, even if you only experiment with it. So even if you try it for 2 months and then see what it is, it's I doubt you can lose with that sort of strategy as an experiment. Okay, more questions. Armando follows up. My app is Believe Daily Affirmations is ranking top 1, 2 in Android, but almost not found in iOS. I have 120 US ratings, and other apps with no ratings or released recently are ranking better. That's a good question. I can take a look at this out of band and maybe reply some other way. So either drop this in the chat or send me an email. I would love to take a look at this, but I don't think I have enough time to do that now. This actually does touch on something that I wanted to show but didn't get to show. And in one of the things that I also look in Inspector is I look at apps that were released recently. So let's change this back to language learning. And let's see how many apps were released, let's say in the last 30 days. So 30 days ago. 48. So, okay. Interesting. Let's expand this a little bit. So this year, 426, which means that of these 3,000 apps, they're all pretty old. And we can make some changes to the way this looks, and we can include the release date. I'm just curious now. And let's see if we can sort by this and see what we can get. Oh, we're looking at my face and not at my screen. Now we're looking at the screen. So I'll do this again. This was fun. I'm looking at my screen, obviously. So what was I doing before? Okay, so I was doing this. We'll go into Explore back, and I did not spell language properly. So I'm looking for language learning again, and I see 4,600 apps, but how many of those were released in the last 30 days? So we'll say 30 days ago, 59. if we go now into maybe this year, it's only 551. So ultimately, we're not looking at a lot of new apps. A lot of these apps out of that 3,000 are really old. Now, that's important because if you are making a new app, this is not very competitive in a sense that new apps are coming out all the time. This is just the behemoth, those really the bigs, as I call them, in the piece that I wrote about Duolingo. The bigs are getting bigger. Now, one thing you can do is you can set up an alert for every time a new app joins a particular search. You can get an email about it. And that's how I make sure that the Appfigures brand is represented well on the Appfigures, on the App Store and on Google Play. But we can worry about that later. So what I did when you weren't looking or when I wasn't showing my screen is I added the release date column to this table, which I did from the Fields menu. And what I can do here is I can look at the latest releases and the earliest releases, which gives you a very interesting look at how these apps or how this segment is doing. So that was just a quick one. Now we can go back to my face and let's see what else we have in the chat. So that was that. Armando is adding that he is using the keyword suggestion tab in Appfigures to find keywords. That's a perfect way to do it. And that's a perfect way to find what I was saying before, finding keywords that are similar, may be easier to compete with on new ratings, but have a similar popularity. Hopefully similar, maybe higher. That is very unlikely because the higher the popularity, the more competitors would want to go after it. But usually just a little bit lower. So you want to aim for the lowest possible away from the keyword you want to do, if we're going back to that conversation. Now, another question from 3DGSS. Is keyword in reviews impact keyword ranking? The answer is yes and no. On Google Play, it absolutely does, which I never understood, but it does work. On Google Play, on the App Store, it doesn't. And so you want to make sure that people are using keywords, but you can't really. I feel like Google Play just maybe didn't think about it all that much. Like, there's some text. Let's read it because we're good at reading text. But it kind of feels like it was made just for being gamed, which I don't necessarily understand. I'm not saying go out and buy reviews that have keywords that have the right keywords in them. Do not do that. Google definitely doesn't like that. It gets really ugly too because I talked to a bunch of developers. This was probably last year. Who had competitors who bought reviews for them with keywords. And you're probably thinking, why would anyone do that for a competitor? And the answer is to get Google to hate them. So they bought a bunch of keywords, they bought a bunch of reviews with specific keywords, and those reviews eventually got them kicked off of the store, which is really bad. They didn't get kicked off of the store, they just got demoted in search results, but getting out of when Google starts hating you, whether that's for search engine optimization, something I fought with in a previous lifetime, or on Google Play, which is something I help developers fight with now, when they hate you, it's really bad. It's really, really bad. So you don't want to do that. But that's the answer to that one. Now, another one from Redis is asking, what is the ideal density range? You can play with the keyword density tool. You will get to see all those things. They're all going to be documented in there. Usually around 3% is what I aim for. You don't want to have too many keywords that are 3%, though. So take the one that is most important, maybe the two, maybe the top three, and aim for 2 to 3%. Anything less than 2, and I think it's going to get swallowed in everything else that's happening. Everything more than 3 will start to feel kind of spammy. So you want to be in the 2 to 3% range. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that it will apply to all the apps or all the games. It, again, depends a lot on what your competitors are doing, but in general, that's what I would aim for. I think that's everything we have, everything I see in the chat so far. So we're also down to no time. So what do we do now? If you have any more questions, now's a good time to ask them. Otherwise, let me show you where I do all of these things. So we're back to my computer. And if you are, and I lost my mouse again. Come on, mouse. Aha, I found my mouse again. And if you're in the menu, my favorite tools are Keyword Inspector, as you probably know, Explorer, which is what I just showed you, and Competitor Intelligence. So all of those three are my favorite tools, and I use them all the time in order to do this. And that gives me kind of a leg up on competition. Now, you can use a combination of these. I like Keyword Inspector, which you're seeing on the screen now, because what it does is it gives me kind of a very easy understanding of what's going on. I get to see the downloads, I get to see the ratings, I get to see the placement, I get to see the popularity. And so I get to see a lot of things at a glance. And then if I want to go any deeper, I go deeper from here. So that's it if you were curious about Keyword Inspector. Now, I did mention that Explorer has a free tier. So if you have an Appfigures account, you can use that right now and understand what's going on in your industry at a glance. If you don't, you can sign up. It's free. And if you are not using any of the ASO tools, we have a free trial, so you can give them a try and see how all of that works. And I'm saying that because I know that enough people trust their gut, and gut when it comes to App Store optimization and competitor intelligence is not as good as the data. And so that's very, very important. Now, if you have any more questions, I don't think I have any more time to go over things. But if you have any more questions, now is a good time to drop them into the chat and ask away before we take off. Otherwise, oh, I see more questions. Okay, so we're going back to questions. Jessica is asking, can you show us how to use the suggested keywords feature? The answer is absolutely. So let's go back in here. Oh, I have too many windows open. And let's go into suggested keywords. So the idea again with keywords is that you want to find keywords where you can compete, but not necessarily, and are necessarily the highest popularity. The most popular is the word I was looking for. So we're still in Duolingo world. So let's see what Babbel has to offer us. And the way this works is the suggestions are based off of machine learning that kind of scours the App Store or Google Play, depending on the app, and looks for what's working for apps that are similar in search results. So whereas Babbel ranking, take all of those keywords, and then from there, go and see what other apps are ranking there, what other keywords are working for them, meaning they're ranking in the top 5, collect all of those, and throw all of those into this list, which we will then be able to filter and sort so we can get some ideas. This is the equivalent of related keywords, but related keywords does the same thing off of a keyword, not off of an app, if that makes sense. While this is loading, I will answer a few more questions from the chat. So let's see. Someone is asking, how often can we update App Store information? And the answer is, it really depends. I've seen updates happen, or I've seen changes off of updates happen really quickly within a few hours, meaning you update your name or your keyword list or your description on Google Play, and you see ranks change, keyword ranks change within a few hours on the App Store, a little bit longer on Google Play. I've also seen cases where that's not the case and it takes a couple of weeks. And the thing is, it doesn't mean that if it doesn't happen immediately, it's never going to happen. It just means that it's probably a stronger indication to the algorithm when it does happen very quickly. I usually like to wait 3 to 4 weeks in general across the App Store and Google Play, a little bit more, a little bit less. So it's one of those things where if you wait just enough, I think you will get the answers you're looking for. I would say 2 to 3 weeks is probably a decent time, and you'll get to see based on those. And now the list loaded. So back to Jessica's question. So what we're seeing here is we're seeing a whole bunch of keyword suggestions for Babbel. And for those keyword suggestions, we're not taking away any keywords that Babbel is ranking in, because those are potentially good keywords that just elevating it up would help. And so let's look at everything that has language so we can focus this a little bit. And let's sort this by popularity. So this is pretty interesting. We can see Babbel is doing pretty well, but this is interesting. Look at this popularity. 14. Not that crazy. We're 21. Now, this is a good opportunity. I don't know if this is a great opportunity, but this is an opportunity. It's an opportunity because people are obviously searching for French language. But by being 21, we know that the algorithm sees Babbel. They know that Babbel exists, And with a few minor tweaks, we can probably rank well for this, especially a popularity of 14. I probably wouldn't do it for a popularity of 14 and look at something a little bit more interesting. But we can see Babbel's doing pretty well. I mean, if we look at what's happening here, it's really number 2 in a bunch of popular keywords. That's good, but it's not great because they're just number 2. I've yet to find a keyword that's relevant where they're number 1. So that kind of it's not ideal. Not ideal for them, at least. But that's something that is important to know, especially if you're trying to compete with Babbel. I went a slightly different way on this. I should have done Duolingo, but now that we've seen it, we've seen it. So that's how you would use the suggested keywords, and the opposite of this would be looking for something like this. This is not how you write this. Learning. And you would use related keywords. And related keywords works exactly the same way. So it's taking the keywords that all the apps are ranked in and then continuing to scour the internet for more, not the internet, the App Store in this case, for more keywords that are relevant. And you can use this to figure out exactly what you can use if you are unable to compete for one of those keywords that you want to compete on, but can't because you don't have enough ratings or something else doesn't work exactly as you would like until you change your ratio or really anything like that. And I believe this is all the time I have. I can probably talk for another hour. So there's going to be a part 2, I now realize. So keep an eye out for that. There's a great live stream coming up in a few weeks where I'll be talking about ASO trends. And I'm going to go back in time and review the ASO trends that I said will take place in 2022 and see if I was right. Hint, well, I'm not going to tell you yet. You can read that article for yourself and see, but I'm going to review that, and we're going to talk about what's going to happen in 2023, open the door for a new article. So that's going to be next month. I hope you enjoyed this one. I hope you found everything you needed in order to compete with in order to learn from your competitors, or at least half of it, because we'll do this. Again, if you like this, give this live stream, not video, a like, and consider subscribing because I do this twice a month. Once this month, but twice normally. And that's pretty much it for me. If you have any more questions that I didn't get to, drop them in the comments because the chat is going to go away, or send me an email. I think you have my email at this point. You can also find me on Twitter. And that's pretty much it for me. So I will say bye-bye.